My sister served as empress for 1 year before dying in childbirth. At 8 years old, I was dressed in red wedding robes by my parents and sent into the imperial palace. At an age when I still needed care myself, I became the new empress, the imperial mother to a young prince, in the Phoenix Palace. My wails were louder than the little prince's. The emperor scratched his head in frustration. Physicians, poison my ears deaf. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. A crowd of palace maids and eunuchs knelt across the floor. The imperial physicians broke out in cold sweat, deafening the emperor with poison. That's like using the heads of one's 9 generations as footballs. Seeing that no one understood me, I cried even louder. Nanny Gui, who had experience with children, gathered her courage to comfort me. Your Majesty, don't cry, don't cry. Are you hungry? I nodded. Sniffing with snot bubbles, within moments, all sorts of pastries and dishes were brought in. I wiped away my tears and snot with my wind-whipped robe. Once I started eating and drinking heartily, I stopped crying. As I ceased my weeping, the little prince in swaddling clothes gradually calmed down and fell into a peaceful slumber. Guang pinched the bridge of his nose, exclaiming it was more exhausting than waging war. The previous emperor was a tyrant, under whose rule the people suffered greatly. Guang, born into a martial arts family, led the rebel army to slay the dragon and became emperor himself. Didn't the Song family claim she was mature beyond her years and could assist me in court affairs if she entered the palace? I wanted a daughter of the Song family to be Jing's mother and raise him properly, not for the Song family to send the child into the palace for me to raise. He was furious. A palm slammed onto the table, rattling the teacups with a clinking sound. No wonder raising children drives anyone mad. Guang hesitated several times, words caught in his throat. Gazing at my face, which bore a 50% resemblance to my sister's, he finally gave my head a gentle pat. He sighed and said, "Forget it. You're still just a child. I have many things to study every day. Besides learning court etiquette from the instructing matrons, I also have to study with the imperial tutor the rest of the time. I must also learn how to take good care of Jing, because last time, I cried loudly from hunger." Guang specifically instructed Fengyi Palace to no longer adhere to the rule of fixed meal times. As long as the empress is hungry, meals can be served at any time, so I never cried again. Only sometimes when I missed my parents, I would hide and secretly wipe away tears. But no one ever knew, perhaps because of our blood ties. Jing was naturally very attached to me. Whenever I hummed a lullaby, it could soothe his incessant crying. Life in the palace was bearable. Except for the lack of freedom, it seemed to be going fairly well. The change came after Guang hadn't visited Fengyi Palace for a month. The palace servants were all whispering that the emperor intended to take the Minister of Revenue's legitimate daughter as his consort. I, this greenhorn steppe empress, am left with a suckling prince. I fear there will be no good days ahead. The bolder ones have begun stealing items from the Phoenix Palace to offer to the chief eunuch, begging to be transferred to serve in other palaces. I can't be bothered to care. Anyway, Phoenix Palace is vast enough, plenty of people, plenty of things, no fear of them leaving. So later, even those less bold began to secretly leave Phoenix Palace. In just half a month, half the people in the palace had disappeared. Those who remained hardly listened to me either. That day, Jing cried hungrily, and I asked the wet nurse to feed him, yet she lounged in her chair eating nuts, pretending not to hear. "My lady," she said, "I'm terribly thirsty." A thirsty woman can't produce milk. I held Jing in my arms, freeing one hand to pour her a cup of tea. She laughed again. "Your Highness, you're still too young to understand. A woman's milk isn't like drawing water from a well. It doesn't just appear when you want it." This remark made the other maids in the palace, who were cracking melon seeds, burst into laughter as well. Jing wailed incessantly, and I grew somewhat anxious. "Then what must you do to have milk?" The wet nurse set down the nuts and folded her arms across her chest. She closed her eyes in a more comfortable position. "I'm a bit sleepy. Let me take a nap first." Then she added, "Take him farther away. His crying is giving me a headache." "Bastard!" A robust voice rang out. A bright yellow robe came into my view. The palace maids, who had been sitting cross-legged gossiping, immediately prostrated themselves on the ground. The wet nurse tumbled off the recliner in haste to kneel. Before he could properly kneel, he was kicked flying 3 feet away. Not daring to cry out in pain, she quickly knelt properly again, pressing her forehead to the ground. This lowly servant did not know your majesty had arrived. Please forgive this offense. Guang was furious, pointing at everyone's noses as he cursed, worthless dogs. Must I personally watch over you for you to serve your mistress properly? Who taught you to deceive your emperor like this? The wet nurse and palace maids all kowtowed in unison, begging for mercy. I comforted the crying Jinga with a pained heart, beginning to warm some milk over the charcoal fire used for brewing tea. Jinga, be good, it'll be ready soon. Just wait for mother a little longer. Guang looked at me with a somewhat dazed expression. Perhaps he thought it surprising that after just a month and a half apart, I'd already become so adept at caring for Jinga. Afraid of frightening the child, he ordered the wet nurse and the palace maids on duty to be taken away. They were dragged far away, then all beaten to death. Jinga was not a fussy child. After being fed, he played with a rattle drum for a while, then obediently fell asleep. The instructing matron arrived punctually to teach me palace etiquette and decorum. Noticing Guang's presence, she stood waiting to the side. I stood properly by Guang's side in silence. He said nothing, and I merely kept my head lowered. After a long while, he finally called to me, "Rana." I instinctively responded, The matron coughed twice, reminding me. I quickly realized my mistake and corrected myself. "Your Majesty, this concubine is present." I had learned the court etiquette quite well, yet he didn't seem particularly pleased. He waved impatiently at the matron. "When the Empress is alone with me, there's no need for such formalities. You may leave." After the matron had gone, Guang quite unceremoniously sat down on the steps by the palace door. He sprawled out on the ground, not a trace of the dignity befitting the son of heaven remaining. He said to me, "Rana, in private, you can still call me brother-in-law or brother Yuang like you used to." I immediately relaxed. His sudden outburst of anger when he arrived today really frightened me. He patted the steps beside him, signaling for me to sit next to him. Just like in the days when he wasn't yet the emperor, before the rebel army rose up, when my sister was still alive, they would always sit casually on the doorstep, watching the sunrise or sunset, chatting and laughing, teasing each other. I was only 4 years old then. I would smell medicinal herbs and learn their names in the retired imperial physician's house next door. Whenever I saw them sitting at the doorway, I always loved to squeeze myself into the middle, resting my head on my elder sister's lap. My sister would gently stroke my head, smiling with tender warmth. Guang's voice choked slightly. "Rana, do you miss your sister?" "Of course I miss her terribly. I don't like the imperial palace. I don't like children. I dislike taking care of children in the imperial palace even more. But whenever I remember this child was born through my sister's desperate efforts, I try my best to learn how to raise him well. My sister left in such haste that she didn't leave me a single word. This scene is perhaps the only keepsake she left me." Guang didn't look at me, and probably didn't see my nod either. He just kept gazing at the sky. The sky was gloomy today, shrouded in mist. "It doesn't compare at all to the sunrises and sunsets I once watched with your sister. Jinga is the only child your sister and I have. I hope he can grow up healthy and safe, enter the Eastern Palace in the future, and rightfully become the next emperor. But those ministers and noble families are truly detestable, each eyeing my harem, some wanting to send their daughters to my bed, others angling for titles. Rana, brother-in-law, I miss your sister so much." Guang's voice grew increasingly hoarse as he spoke. When he finally turned to look at me, there were shattered starlights flickering in his eyes. Even the most hardened heart would be moved to see an emperor shed tears. I listened in utter confusion. I vaguely sensed it was probably related to what the Grand Tutor had mentioned during lectures, factional strife and succession disputes. Guang spent the afternoon with Jinga at Fengyi Palace. He had originally planned to stay for dinner before leaving, but after his chief eunuch whispered something in his ear, he hurried off to attend to official matters. The next day, Jiang Minmin, the legitimate daughter of the Minister of Revenue, entered the palace and was in theft as the virtuous consort. I found it laughable. Just yesterday, he was still tearfully missing my sister, yet in the blink of an eye, there was already a new favorite. When Jiang Minmin came to Fengyi Palace to pay her respects, following the instructions from the matron, I sat upright in the host's seat, putting on the airs of an empress. Gu Yuanji said that long before Jing'e was born, he had been pressured by ministers to welcome this Jiang Minmin into the palace. I thought she must be happy now that she had finally gotten her wish, but unexpectedly, her eyes were terribly swollen and red, just like mine had been when my sister passed away. When the morning courtesies concluded and she was leaving Fengyi Palace, I still couldn't resist calling out to stop her. Just like how mother comforted me on the day I entered the palace, I said, "Be happy once you're in the palace, if nothing else, the pastries there are always delicious." I picked up an almond cake from the table. After some thought, it felt a bit too petty. Suppressing my craving, I gave her the entire plate of pastries, with reddened eyes. She expressed her gratitude and left with the plate before my mouth could water. From then on, my daily routine gained another item. It was Jiang Minmin coming to pay her respects every day. She was always melancholy, only occasionally, when teasing Jing'e, would she manage a rare smile. Over time, I began to think perhaps she was born without the capacity for laughter. Later on, 2 more people entered the palace. One was Pei Xiong, daughter of the Minister of Personnel, who was granted the title of Noble Lady Rong. The other was Wei Yiying, daughter of a senior minister who had served as chancellor through 2 dynasties, immediately bestowed the rank of noble consort upon entering the palace. The imperial harem suddenly became lively. Within 3 months, Pei Xiong announced the joyous news of conceiving the imperial heir. Gu Yuanyi was overjoyed and elevated her from noble lady to consort Rong, relocating her to the Chaoyang Palace. By that time, Jing'e had also reached his first birthday. The firstborn prince of the new dynasty's full-year celebration was lavishly celebrated. The number of palace servants in Fengyi Palace increased once again. Seeing that I was usually close to Jiang Minmin, Gu Yuanji had her assist me in preparing the banquet. Jing'e, chubby and adorable, toddled along holding onto one of my fingers. Everyone who saw the child praised how clever and lovely they were. All was peaceful, at least on the surface. That's how it appeared. As the banquet neared its end, plums were served to cleanse the palate. I was about to feed a piece of the fruit to Jing'e. Suddenly, a palace maid cried out in alarm, "My lady, what's wrong with you?" Beneath the seat, Pei Xiong lay in agony, collapsed over the desk. Jade cups toppled from the table in a crash. Gu Yuanji strode to her side and bellowed, "Summon the imperial physician." Naturally, I too saw the pool of blood spreading beneath consort Rong's skirts. Gu Yuanji held Pei Xiong's hand. His gaze swept past the crowd and landed on me and Jing'e. For a moment, I couldn't tell whether that look held worry or reproach. At the corner of Pei Xiong's mouth, there still remained unwashed traces of waxberry juice. I was so frightened that I immediately threw the bayberries in my hand away. Jing'e burst into tears from the shock of the sudden incident. Nanny Gui was about to take him away. But I couldn't rest easy in my heart and insisted on holding him in my arms no matter what. This banquet was arranged by me and Jiang Minmin. I watched Jiang Minmin sitting upright at the table. Apart from looking at Pei Xiong with concern, she showed no sign of fear, as if everything had nothing to do with her. Pei Xiong's life is not in danger, but the child could not be saved. Gu Yuanji said the palace maid who poisoned her had already committed suicide out of guilt, making it impossible to trace who was behind it. But since it happened in Fengyi Palace, I bear undeniable responsibility. Jiang Minmin, who assisted in organizing the banquet, must also be held accountable. Thus, Jiang Minmin was placed under house arrest and demoted from imperial consort to concubine. I was stripped of my authority to manage the 6 palaces, which was transferred to noble consort Wei Yiying, in this case of conspiring against the imperial heir. Among the 4 noble consorts of the inner palace, only Wei Yiying emerged as the victor. Gu Yuanji rested his forehead in one hand, his mood reaching the peak of irritation. He said this was already the result of him standing against the ministers to protect me. Otherwise, my position as empress would be lost. Jing'e could no longer be raised by my side either. My heart still pounds with lingering fear. Suddenly I understood, in the royal family, imperial bloodlines are the greatest threat to one's enemies. That night, after I'd lulled Jinga to sleep with the wet nurse keeping watch over him, I summoned every soul within Fengyi Palace to assemble. The moonlight was cold and desolate. The long sword my elder sister wielded in battle alongside Jiu Yuanji slid from its sheath in my hand. The blade gleamed with a chilling light under the moon, sending shivers down one's spine. A courtyard full of palace maids and eunuchs knelt in prostration. The wet nurse's background had been personally vetted by Jiu Yuanji. Nanny Gui was formerly my elder sister's most trusted confidant. Apart from these two, I trust no one else. I spoke coldly. Speak. Which of the noble consorts do each of you serve? The crowd murmured quietly. Yet no one answered my question. After a moment, a young eunuch raised his head, though kneeling and looking up at me. His face was full of cheeky smiles. Naturally. Everyone in the Phoenix Palace belongs to Her Majesty the Empress. For your highness to say such words truly chills our humble hearts. I held a long sword in my hand and walked to his side with a smile. He naively thought I believed his words and looked up at me with a grin. His neck was stretched just right. The next moment, the blade slit his throat. The warm blood sprayed all over the palace attendant beside me. It also splattered onto my dress. That year I was 9 years old, the first time I killed someone. The smell of blood was unpleasant. I suppressed the nausea rising in my throat and continued my questioning. This palace grants you a chance. Those who confess truthfully may leave Phoenix Palace and seek employment in other palaces. I deliberately paused, letting the sword tip scrape against the blue stone bricks, dragging out a sharp, grating sound. Those who remain obstinate will end up like him. The hall was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I noticed a palace maid with an unusual expression. She even looked somewhat familiar. I pinched her chin, forcing her to look up. Are you from Peixiong's palace? She paused for a moment, then repeatedly agreed. I scoffed and pointed the sword tip at her heart. Lies. I clearly saw you in Wei Ying's palace. She suddenly trembled all over and finally told the truth. I beg your highness to spare my life. This servant truly belongs to Consort Shu's palace. The crown prince's birthday banquet was short-staffed, so I came to serve at Fengyi Palace. With just a glance from me, Nanny Gui immediately stepped forward and straightened her body. The long sword plunged straight into her chest. When the sword was pulled out, the blood stained the clothes of several others. After that, getting answers became much easier. Those who were planted by other palaces were all punished with 30 strokes of the rod before being thrown out. Those who remained also had to undergo thorough background checks by Matron Gui. Only then could they serve in the Phoenix Palace. It wasn't until dawn that I finally dismissed everyone. Looking at my blood-stained hands, my heart pounds like a drumstick, unable to calm. Once I dreamed of mastering great medical skills to save people from suffering. Yet these hands, before they could heal. First, I killed a man. The air today is unbearably stifling. Tears well up uncontrollably in my eyes. Nanny Gui helps me remove my outer robe, now stained with crimson plum blossoms. She brought me water again to wash the bloodstains from my hands. Tears welled up in her eyes, filled with heartache. My lady, you've suffered so much, she said. I was stunned for a long moment before finally shaking my head. My sister's child, I could never entrust them to anyone else. I must keep Jinga by my side and ensure he grows up safe and sound. After tonight, no one will dare to bully the young master of Fengyi Palace again. Such a grand display naturally reached Jiu Yuanji's ears as well. So many people have been planted around his own son. He actually just sent a eunuch to deliver a message. The Empress has matured greatly, which brings me much comfort. Jinga will have someone to rely on in the future. I listened to the imperial decree with proper decorum. Then the eunuch went on about how Jiu Yuanji was deeply concerned for Jinga, and couldn't come in person because of the trouble caused by Fengyi Palace. I smiled warmly on the surface, but inwardly I felt my sister deserved better. Yet in just a year's time, Jiu Yuanji had become a different person. Even visiting Jinga now required weighing the pros and cons first. The incident of poison at the banquet gradually distanced me from Jiang Minmin and Pei Xiong. Spring passed and autumn came. 2 full years had gone by. The peach trees in Fengyi Palace had bloomed twice. Throughout the entire palace, only consort Shu Wei Ying was 7 months pregnant. Jinga had now learned to recite poems and recognize characters. repeatedly praised by the imperial tutor for his remarkable intelligence. Another autumn hunt, Jinga, full of curiosity, begged me to take him along. The imperial hunting grounds were heavily guarded. At every step stood a sentry. The guards standing straighter than the maple trees lining the path. Guang fired the first arrow, signaling the official start of the hunt. The young generals and noble sons skilled in archery and horsemanship cracked their whips and galloped away with cheers. Wei Yiying, being pregnant, returned to her tent surrounded by palace attendants after watching the excitement. Jinga hadn't had his fill of fun yet, so I stayed behind with him, on the training grounds. He was pestering General Ji to teach him horseback riding. His elder sister's martial skills were personally taught by old Ji. He was the master she had formally acknowledged through ceremonial rites. Moreover, he was a founding hero of the dynasty, having rendered meritorious service in establishing the imperial reign. Even Guang often found himself speechless when rebutted by him, but he was extremely indulgent towards Jinga. Countless white whiskers had been pulled out. Yet he still smiled with benevolent kindness. The grandfather and grandson rode on horseback, their laughter clear and lingering. Such joyful family bonding makes even this emperor feel a twinge of envy. Guang had somehow arrived by my side. He gazed at Jinga's figure, his eyes somewhat distant. Moments later, an imperial guard approached and half knelt beside him, bowing his head with a fist and palm salute. "Your Majesty." No specific matter was mentioned, clearly something I wasn't meant to know. Guang's expression turned serious again as he handed me a token. "Rana, though the hunting grounds are heavily guarded, they're no safer than the palace. Let Jinga play a while longer, then take him back to the tent to rest. You mustn't wander about." Guang left a contingent of imperial guards with me before hastily departing with his men. An inexplicable unease welled up in my heart. This year's hunting expedition seems poised for significant events. Though Jinga loves horseback riding, he is after all only 3 years old. Within just 1 hour, his energy was completely spent. Now he sleeps peacefully in the tent. The imperial guard stood watch outside. I had just sat down to drink a cup of tea when a guard entered the tent to report. Reporting to Her Majesty the Empress, noble consorts Yan and consort Rong are both resting in their own tents. Only virtuous consort Shu has gone to the hot spring pool in the west. Wei Yiying, heavy with child, still insisted on going to the hot springs. The sense of foreboding grew stronger by the moment. I frowned and asked, "Where is His Majesty?" The guard replied, "Forgive me, Your Highness, this humble servant does not know." Just then, another guard entered the tent. "Your Highness, the Prime Minister has taken a contingent of men toward the hot springs." I pressed further, "Which division do they belong to?" The guard bowed his head. "They don't appear to be palace guards. Rather, they resemble private troops." Suddenly, I recalled the words Guang had spoken to me at the martial training grounds. It seems the upheaval about to unfold today concerns whether the throne will change hands. Have the guards send word to Jiang Minmin and Pei Xiong, telling them to be extra vigilant. Then I picked up my elder sister's long sword again, and sat guarding by Jinga's bedside. Before long, the clamor of chaos and disorder arose outside. A palace guard entered the tent to report, "Your Highness, rebels have launched a surprise attack. Please follow me to a safer location." In a panic, I roused Jinga, always sensible. He didn't get angry despite having his sleep disturbed and obediently followed me. Beyond the tent, I saw the fiery sunset on the horizon, redder than the maple leaves in the hunting grounds. Yet redder than the sunset was the tent of Guang not far above us. "Mother, Father's tent is on fire," Jinga cried out. Clutching my hand in alarm, I soothed him with a pat on the head and led him to retreat under the protection of the imperial guards. "Don't be afraid, your father will be fine. We must hurry." Guang had long anticipated this situation and had made arrangements to ensure his own safety. Jinga, being the only prince, would inevitably become the rebels' target. Though guarded by a troop of imperial soldiers, it was still far from being an impenetrable fortress. Jinga's childish voice couldn't conceal his worry, "But Consort Ying lives with Father Emperor, and she's carrying my little brother or sister. Did she escape safely?" I didn't answer further, only had someone pick up Jinga as we hurried away. On either side below were the military tents of Jiang Minmin and Pei Xiong. I took them with me as we retreated to the mountain palace below. The twilight deepened, and the red glow on the horizon faded. The fire on the mountain still burned. It lit up half the sky. Frightened, Jing'er was unusually clingy tonight. I finally managed to coax him to sleep. Standing before the hall, I gazed at the flames on the distant mountain. The entire journey down the mountain was filled with anxiety. Yet, to my surprise, it went smoothly. Not a single rebel was encountered. The hunting grounds rebellion was grand in scale, yet minimal in action. I fear there may be hidden circumstances. Jiang Minmin brought me a cloak for warmth. Your Majesty, please sit and rest a while. Only then did I snap out of my thoughts. Where is Jing'er? She replied. Don't worry, Consort Rong is keeping watch. Gu didn't come down from the mountain until the dead of night. When he watched Jing'er riding in the training grounds, he was still dressed in brocade robes. Now he had changed into the battle armor he wore during the war years. The Imperial Guards announced, Chancellor Wei Jian has been executed on the spot for treason. While Consort Shu of the Wei clan was struck by an arrow and perished in the chaos of battle, I watched calmly as Gu, who seemed to have endured a fierce battle, removed his armor, secretly making calculations in my heart. The child in Wei Ying's womb, this was Gu's third child. Royal offspring had the hardest time surviving, with schemes and plots lurking everywhere. Wei Jian was a veteran minister who had served 2 dynasties. His prestige was high, and his network of allies was intricate and complex. Gu Yuan had long suffered from being constrained by him. Now Wei Jian has died for treason. The court officials who were once close to him quickly distanced themselves, pledging their loyalty to Gu Yuan instead. 4 years into the founding of the dynasty, only now could he truly be considered to become the ruler of a nation. Minister Jiang of the Ministry of Revenue was rewarded for his merit in quelling the rebellion. With the position of Prime Minister now vacant, Gu promoted him to the post. Even Jiang Minmin was elevated once more, from virtuous consort to virtuous noble consort. That day, he came to Fengyi Palace after a long absence. Seeing Jing'er practicing calligraphy, he thought of teaching some brushwork. Through ninefold heaven the palace gates unfold. From myriad lands come coronets and crowns. Gu had just finished writing the lines on rice paper when Jing'er recited them word by word. His face lit up with astonishment. Jing'er, you actually recognize all these characters? Jing'er nodded and bowed gracefully to Gu. Both the Grand Tutor and Her Majesty the Empress have taught me this poem. In the future, I will assist His Majesty the Emperor in making Dakian as prosperous and flourishing as described in the poem, with all nations coming to pay tribute. The little child stood tall and straight, looking up at Gu with pride. His eyes sparkled with admiration for his father. Gu lifted Jing'er up with satisfaction. Then he held him close in his arms, watching as the child carefully traced each stroke of the poem beside the original characters. Jing'er's calligraphy lacked the grandeur of Gu's, but it was already showing signs of developing a bold style. I noticed the hint of loneliness beneath Gu's delighted expression. I said softly, Jing'er, you've been practicing for 2 hours today. Go play for a while. Only after Jing'er left did Gu reveal his true feelings. Afu, our child is exceptionally bright. I always thought we had plenty of time ahead. But only now do I realize how much of his growing years we've already missed without noticing. Yes, elder sister. Jing'er is almost 4 years old now. Rest assured, I've raised him well. Gu handed back to me the responsibility of managing the imperial harem. I presented the specially prepared soup. Your Majesty, please try this lotus seed porridge. Back in our hometown, this had always been his favorite dish from my family. Whenever my elder sister brought him home for visits, this dish was indispensable on our dining table. Seeing me approach, he twirled the loose strands of hair at my forehead. His eyes held an indescribable emotion. Rana, you'll be 12 by year's end, won't you? You're growing more and more like your sister. I turned my head away. Brother-in-law. It was the first time in my years at the palace that I'd addressed him this way. Elder sister knows you've never stopped thinking of her. It would make her happy. Gu regained his composure. He lowered his gaze to conceal his earlier emotions. finished the last sip of soup, and left. I sat before the bronze mirror, staring at the strands of hair he had touched. Taking up scissors, I lopped off that lock of hair in disgust. Year after year, the flowers remain the same, but people change with each passing year. In recent years, many new beauties have entered the palace. From low-ranking concubines to noble consorts, 16 have been granted titles in succession. Though the emperor's favor was evenly distributed, Guang's favorites remained Jiang Minmin and Pei Xiong. The palace became more crowded, and even Fengyi Palace grew livelier as a result. After the daily morning greetings from the concubines, I always kept Jiang Minmin and Pei Xiong to chat a while longer. Years ago, Pei Xiong had suffered a miscarriage from poisoning during Jing's birthday banquet. Jiang Minmin and I were the prime suspects. But now, with so many new faces in the palace, an unspoken bond has formed between the three of us. We share a tacit understanding between us. The censor's repeated admonitions stem from Ji Yuan's lack of heirs. Apart from Prince Jing, no other concubine in the harem has borne children. Ji Yuan grew older with each passing year. When his strength failed him, he relied more on the imperial physician's medicinal cuisine. In recent years, all the palace concubines had learned to brew nourishing soups. "Brother-in-law, your constitution is weak, you should take more tonic soups," they would say. Ji Yuan reached out to touch my face. But before his palm could reach my cheek, a soup spoon appeared in his hand instead. Finally losing his temper, he slammed the spoon heavily on the table. "I've already had my fill at virtuous consort's place. The Empress may keep this for herself." With that, he flicked his sleeve and stormed out of Fengyi Palace. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. That year I turned 15, growing more and more to resemble my elder sister. Ji Yuan visited Fengyi Palace with increasing frequency. In the past, calling him brother-in-law would make him come to his senses, but now even that no longer worked. Whenever he tried to have a serious conversation with me, I would always crack jokes and interrupt to drive him away, watching from afar as Ji Yuan's steps grew slightly unsteady. The forced smile faded from my face, replaced by a frosty glint in my eyes. "Sister, the time is almost upon us." As I had anticipated, Ji Yuan fell ill. The imperial physicians spoke in obscure terms. But between the lines, their words all pointed to his impending demise. He summoned me and entrusted me with the edict designating Jing as his successor. Ji Yuan lay on the couch with sunken eyes and a gaunt, withered appearance, gazing at my face. He spoke of his deep affection for my sister, Rana. "Your brother-in-law will soon be joining your sister. In a way, this could be considered a joyous occasion. There's no need for me to pretend anymore." With a cold expression and resentful tone, I said, "Ji Yuan, don't even think about looking for my sister. She'll never forgive you." I took out a letter from my bosom and unfolded it right above Ji Yuan's eyes. His vision had already grown somewhat blurry, making it difficult for him to see clearly, but he recognized it. Those were his sister's handwriting. Just the 3 words "divorce agreement" at the beginning made his blood boil and his breath come in ragged gasps. After what felt like an eternity, he finally finished reading. His bloodshot eyes brimmed with tears, his Adam's apple bobbed with a strange gurgling sound in his throat. Suddenly, a mouthful of blood surged forth. "Afu, so you knew, you actually knew all along." Back then, Ji Yuan had seized the throne by leading an uprising to slay the tyrant, but there were many courtiers who refused to submit. Eager to secure his throne, he sought alliances. The quickest method was through marriage. While my sister was pregnant with Jing, a secret letter personally written by Ji Yuan fell into her hands. That was the alliance Ji Yuan proposed to. Because although they appear to be people from other concubines' palaces, in reality they all follow Ji Yuan's orders. He didn't hesitate to kill his own child, just to provoke conflict between me and Jiang Minmin. When the time came, Jiang Minmin would show disrespect towards me, the Empress. By protecting Jiang Minmin, he would then owe a debt of gratitude to the Jiang family. At the same time, it would allow them to strip me of my authority over the 6 palaces and transfer it to Wei Yiying. They sought to win over Wei Jian, who was then the chancellor of 2 dynasties. This scheme killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Just a child had to die, that's all. As the emperor of a nation, why should he worry about having no heir? Later, during the hunting grounds incident when Wei Jian rebelled,
It was actually he who summoned Wei Ying to the hot springs. At that time, Wei Ying was already 7 months pregnant and would never have gone to such a place voluntarily. Wei Jian, believing his daughter had met with misfortune, rushed in with his troops out of paternal protectiveness. Yet this precisely played into Jiu Yuanji's trap of inviting the enemy into a jar. He set his own tent ablaze. Loudly proclaiming the rebels' treachery, Wei Ying died, a corpse bearing 2 lives. Once again, he exploited women and children. He thoroughly purged all dissenting voices in the court, securing his high position. His schemes, if from the very beginning Jiang Minmin, Pei Xiong, and I had been at odds as he wished, then the truth would have remained unknown. Unfortunately, he underestimated women. You thought we'd only fight over him. Jiu Yuanji was furious and coughed up another mouthful of blood. His pupils began to dilate. I counted silently in my heart. 1, 2, 3. After 10 breaths, Jiu Yuanji's arm fell heavily onto the bedside. The funeral bell for the dragon echoed for miles. The imperial palace was draped in white mourning garments, wails piercing the heavens. Holding the sobbing Jinga in my arms, my tears fell like rain. I thought to myself, sister, Rana took matters into her own hands and killed Jiu Yuanji. But if I hadn't killed him, I fear he might have harmed Jinga for his own gain in the future. I sincerely hope you won't blame me for this. After Jinga ascended the throne, I took charge and disbanded Jiu Yuanji's harem. Those who refused to leave were sent to the imperial retreat to spend the rest of their days. Jiang Minmin and Pei Xiong remained in the palace as the dowager consorts. They assisted the new emperor alongside me. 8 years later, Jinga turned 15. The nation is well governed, bringing peace and prosperity to all lands. With calm seas and clear rivers, I relinquish my regent's authority and voluntarily request to leave the palace. On the day the Empress Dowager and the 2 imperial consorts departed for the newly built retreat palace, the ministers gathered to see them off. While Jinga tearfully expressed her reluctance to part, the procession left the palace and traveled 100 miles. At the break of dawn one day, 3 people broke away from the group, shed their palace attire, and changed into commoners' robes. Minmin, Pei Xiong, this is where we part, I said with a cupped fist salute. Pei Xiong looked somewhat saddened. Ran Mai, are you really not coming with us? We could live together just like before. I gazed in the direction of the Song family's old residence. No, my master is still alive. I promised him that I would study medicine with him and heal the world in the future. Jiang Minmin hugged me tightly. Go ahead, Rana. While there's still time for everything, I leaped onto my horse and exchanged a smile with them. Take good care of yourselves. Until we meet again. The newly built palace had neither an Empress Dowager nor imperial consorts, but in a small town south of the Yangtze, 2 businesswomen had appeared. The youngest apprentice of old physician Shu was also hurrying home. A warm red sun broke through the clouds on the horizon. I whipped my horse into a gallop, chasing the sunrise, racing toward the light. My heart surges with excitement. At this moment, the wind is free, and so are the clouds. I am free too. This year I am 23. The life that belongs to me has only just begun.